I represent a group called the Committee for Economic Development. It's a business-led public policy organization. What I'm going to do here today is give you a business perspective on money and politics. I'm going to first start off, after I give a brief promo about CED, start off with a story which became in 1999 the poster child for what is wrong with the political system, what's wrong with our campaign finance system. Then I'm going to talk about how big money in politics is bad for the economy and ultimately bad for business. And then I'm going to give you a business rationale for why a small dollar match is something that business can feel comfortable with and to support. First, CED, I don't know if those of you know my organization. We are a 70-year-old business-led public policy organization. We have our roots in the 1940s when the Marshall Plan came into being, and CED's trustees, business leaders, came together and helped provide the inspiration for the Marshall Plan. Our business leaders come together and put together task forces on many domestic and foreign policy issues, and I think add a much needed business perspective to some of those issues. In the late 1990s, CED released a report called Investing in the People's Business. If you remember the '96 elections when there was the sale of the Lincoln bedroom, many of our members were appalled by getting hit up for multiple contributions, and they wanted to weigh in. As business leaders, they were fed up. They were tired of having to pay a toll to talk to a congressman or a senator. So CED released Investing in the People's Business. Now you got to remember, we're a think tank made up of business leaders, and we weigh in on education issues and the economy, workforce issues, and so we entered the politics debate, the campaign finance reform debate, somewhat naively. After our release, CNN actually covered the release of our report and called it a man bites dog story because business was getting involved in this area. But in the summer of 1999, some of our CEOs started calling us and saying that they were getting letters, personal letters, from Senator Mitch McConnell, then the head of the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee, asking them to resign from CED because of our stand on campaign finance reform. So at first, I quite frankly, I didn't think he would be that silly to put his name to a letter like that. And so at first we really didn't take it all that seriously. But then these letters became personal notes. Senator McConnell was sending personal notes to CEOs across the country telling them to resign from our board. And then we realized this is a big story here. And it was exactly what was wrong with the system. It just so happens that later in the summer we had an editorial board meeting with the New York Times. And we entered that meeting kind of wondering whether or not we should talk to them about this because we really felt uncomfortable. Our chairman, a guy named Ed Kangas, who was the CEO of Deloitte Touche Tohmatsu, who was the chairman of this report, was 10 minutes late for the meeting. So we weren't sure if we should raise this with the editorial board of the New York Times. Ed walks into the meeting and with one of the McConnell letters, walks in, slams it on the desk and says, "This is an outrage. In fact, it's extortion." And we had a business leader for the very first time talk about the fact that this is extortion, what Senator McConnell was doing. And indeed, what was implied here, as he sent those notes to business leaders across the country, was that if you continue to play with CED, I'm not going to let you play with me anymore. And you know, I had some people call me up and say, you know, this guy's an important senator to some of our business. You do realize that. And anyway, CED stuck to its guns. We never had one business leader resign from CED because of it. In fact, we recruited business leaders because they were outraged by being put in that position. So it's an important story. It's a case study, if you will, of what's wrong with the political system. Now, let me also walk you through some of the other things that I think that are at play here and why this is bad for it's bad for business, it's bad for the economy. First, I would argue that there is the appearance of corruption or corruption, depending on how you look at it, a political process that promotes perceptions that government policies are open to the highest bidder is not in accord with the basic tenets of a democratic government, nor is it conducive to a strong business environment. If public policy decisions are made or appear to be made on the basis of political expenditures, policy will be suspect. Now, the CED report that we released in 1999 had many of the tenets of the McCain-Feingold legislation. We called for ending soft money contributions, for reforming issue ads, but we also called for a low-dollar match of congressional contributions across the country, and I'll get to that in a minute. But getting back to the the corruption aspect, I don't need to remind people here in this audience what effect money had to play in this recent economic collapse that we had in 2008 and 2009. If anybody in this room has a question about that, all you have to do is follow the money. So it affects the economy and it affects business. And business leaders recognize that at some level. Now, I'm going to sort of end here and tell you that CED has joined the New York LEAD effort. We're pleased that Bill Donaldson, the former SEC chairman, a CED trustee, has joined the New York LEAD effort. We're working with the Brennan Center. We have some 50 trustees in New York to support the low-dollar match. Now, I'm not going to get into talking to you about why it's a good thing, because we've heard that from some of our speakers. But when you talk to business leaders about the political system and the lack of competition that exists there currently, they see that, and again, they're business leaders. Competition is a good thing. It's good for the economy and it's good for business. And they were appalled, quite frankly, and somewhat naive, but appalled by the fact that these people get reelected time after time after time. And I think what was significant when we approached our business leaders about this issue was that they stepped back and they said, wait a minute, competition's good for the economy, it ought to be good for the political system. That's how you get business leaders engaged around this issue. So as I mentioned, CED is pleased to be part of this effort. Some of our members think that business fares better when they compete in the marketplace than the political arena. That's certainly what we've talked about in the past. And I'm pleased to be a part of this panel here tonight. Thank you.